What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the MMA show presented here by Run Pure Sports. I'm your host, Draftcheat, joined today by Joey Werk and Titletown. Joey, what's going on, man?
What's going on? Another pay-per-view UFC event. Not the greatest of cards, but I'm excited to chop it up with you guys, see our thoughts on each and every fight.
Yeah, I think we're down to, I believe, 12 fights tonight. We've had at least one cancellation. I think another one as well. Got a good main event on UFC 258. Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman should be a pretty fun main event. Other than that, not a ton of big names, but of course, we're not going to complain about a Saturday UFC card. Always fun to watch. We've got the prelims and then, of course, the pay-per-view main card. Title, how you doing? What are your thoughts on this card overall?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Trying to figure out what's been going on with my Ethernet cord these past couple of days. Sounds like you guys can hear me fine. Get the picture all set up, but it's going to be a great main event tonight for sure. Usman Burns. I cannot wait. Rest of the card's a little iffy for a pay-per-view, but always money to be made for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do this show kind of the same format we did last time. If you guys tuned into that one, I'll introduce each fight, talk about the odds a little bit, DFS salaries. I'll throw it to Joey for some some betting talk, and then Title will kind of talk the DFS salaries. I'll chime in where needed and where appropriate. We'll go kind of bottom to top on the card, starting with, of course, the earliest scheduled fights of the night. So with that, let's jump right into the first fight of the night. That's Miranda Maverick and Gillian Robertson. Predicted to be a fairly close fight here. I'm seeing Maverick kind of settling in at around minus 155. She actually opened a few weeks ago at a much bigger line. Money came in on Robertson, and then lately, over these last couple of days, money back in a little bit on Maverick, pushing her to that minus 150, minus 160 range. Both fighters, they're youngsters. I think Maverick just 23. Robertson, I believe, is 25 years old. Robertson has been in the UFC for a number of fights, at least 5 fights, 3-2 in her last 5. Maverick just 1 win in the UFC so far. She's 1-0 in the UFC. What are you seeing here, Joey Werk? I think, kind of somewhat of a tough call to fight for me. I do have a lean here. Interested to see what you're looking at.
Yeah, so Jillian's back in after a loss to the bigger, better, stronger Talia Santos last time out, which was her first UFC fight. She does move forward a lot, but she doesn't really have good stand-up. She prefers to take it to the mat. She barely throws any kicks. And once she finally gets it to the ground, she goes for numerous different kinds of arm bars, rear naked chokes, all kinds of submissions. She is a BJJ black belt. She does have problems with fighters who bring the pressure and continue to move forward, and Maverick is basically exactly that. She continues to move forward, always brings pressure. She did look good in her UFC debut versus my girl Lilian Jujua. Eventually, she got a stoppage in the fight where the doctor stopped because the cut was too bad. She is young, only getting better. Should be able to throw some leg kicks, open up the whole game plan. She throws a lot of volume. She has pretty good power, and she's always moving forward. I think if she can stop Robertson's takedowns, this fight isn't even close on the feet. So I do like Miranda here. At the price, I would expect some money to come in on Robertson late. So I'm going to wait to bet on Miranda. But this is pretty interesting. I was talking to Jay last night from the Run Pure Bet side, and basically fight to go distance is only minus 135. When was the last time we saw a female fight number that low? Other than like a Nunez-Valentina fight, then that number is like they're obviously the books are clearly predicting somebody's getting finished here. If that's the route you want to go, both the inside distance are plus money, so you can possibly do that for half unit each. But that's where I'm at on this one.
Yeah, I kind of echo most of your analysis there. I like Maverick here. Even her wrestling, I kind of looked at some of her tape from Invicta. It looked pretty good. Her offensive wrestling was fine. I'm not sure it's some guarantee that Robertson's going to be able to get to the mat at all, or that she'll win the exchanges, or that she's going to be in top control if it does get to the mat. I certainly like her striking a little bit better than Robertson. So I lean there. I think the line is appropriate. Minus 150, minus 160 feels fine to me. The DraftKings salaries kind of expensive for a fight like this, in my opinion. $8,500 for Maverick feels a little bit much. She's probably going to need a finish at that price point to end up in the optimal lineup. Robertson, $7,700. Again, I don't think the worst play. She throws some volume. She could get there. But yeah, I'm with you, Joey. The minus 135 to go the distance almost seems like a sucker bet. It seems like it's almost too good to be true with these two. I don't really personally see this one likely to get finished, so maybe I'll be the fish and take that minus 135. It's kind of how I'm leaning. I would have not capped it that way myself, right? Like when you're capping this fight, there's no way I would have put that true line of inside the or going the distance at minus 135. So I do like that. Title, what are you seeing here between Maverick and Robertson from a DFS perspective?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much on the same side Joey is for the same reasons. I bet Maverick a couple days ago at minus 140. I got it. It's up to like minus 150, minus 155 now. She's just the better fighter on the feet for sure. It's night and day. She's 23. I like what I saw in her UFC debut. I expect her to get better and better every fight. And I mean, this chick is a very good fighter. I know 8,500 sounds like a lot, but there's only 3 fights that are supposed to end inside the distance today. So we could see a lot lower scoring card than we have in the past. Just because the main event's really the only really high level fight. And then it's we're going to see a lot of these losers today get cut. I think we might even see a winner win a greasy decision and get cut too. So it's not the highest level of cards for sure. 8,500 for someone I think's going to win. And I know who has the power to pick her apart on the feet and get the late finish. Maybe I'm fine with it. Great GPP play. Probably going to be under-owned too, because it's a woman's fight and people are going to be scared. I think Maverick wins this fight. Robertson's definitely path to victory is getting it on the ground, using her wrestling and winning that way. But Maverick's just so much stronger. I think she can keep it on the feet and have her way in this one.
3 for 3 on Maverick to open the night. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It really does help us a lot, guys, bringing you these shows on pretty much every big card for free. Of course, we've got our free NBA shows, just a ton of free content on Run Pure Sports, but we need you to like and subscribe to keep these shows free. Of course, if you want to sign up for all the content on the site, including core plays from both of you for today on this UFC card and everything else over on runpuresports.com, you can use promo code RPS free entry. That's all one word. You'll be entered for a drawing for an $888 entry. I believe that drawing is Monday, and I think you can play that probably anytime next week. So sign up over at runpuresports.com using promo code RPS free entry for a chance to win that big buy-in and get that bankroll boosted. All right, let's go on to the next fight of the night, Philip Rowe and Gabe Green. This one could be interesting, I think. Philip Rowe, interestingly, much taller fighter. I believe he has a 7-inch read advantage. If you look at the weigh-in photos, it's pretty striking just how much taller he looks than Gabe Green. Is expected to be close. Green actually coming in as a slight favorite, around minus 120 to minus 140, depending on where you look. I don't know. Maybe I'm a sucker for this height advantage, but kind of like the dog here, Joey. What are you looking at between Rowe and Green?
Yeah, so this is an interesting matchup. You know, these two pretty good prospects. Green 0-1 in the UFC, lost to Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod last time out. He was basically out-volumed in that fight, lost via decision. He did turn it on in the 3rd round, but eventually he lost. You know, Green has looked pretty good. He's off a 1.5-year layoff, though, so that's kind of scary. You know, all of his professional fights, except for his last fight, were finished before it got to the judges. He does struggle with fighters who have height and reach advantage. And as you mentioned, Phil Rowe has that both here. So he does normally move forward, throw volume, use his kicks. Phil Rowe is a good striker. He has a very fast right hand. Another guy who once he sees his opponent's hurt, he goes for broke. So his striking defense not very good. He does sometimes keep his hands low. Last fight out on Contender Series was over a year ago as well. He was back against the cage versus Leon Shabazian, and he clocked him. Shabazian clocked him. Eventually, he got the better of the two and went on to win via KO in round 3. He does have a massive reach advantage, taller fighter. He should have a grappling edge as well if he gets the fight to the mat, but I'm probably totally off this fight as it's too much of a toss-up for me, but if I was forced to take a side, I would take the dog as well at Philip Rowe.
Yeah, so both these fighters just one fight in the UFC, and both of those were like kind of straight up brawls, right? If you look at the strikes landed, strikes absorbed for both of them, really kind of eye-popping numbers. They both were in there slinging it. Looks like sloppy defense from both of them, but a lot of strikes landed as well, which, you know, you put that together for both fighters. I think both fighters are probably going to want to stand and bang here, and this could be an exciting fight where both these guys come out, you know, throwing haymakers, and we could see someone hit the canvas early here. I think that's certainly possible. I also think it's possible one of these guys could win a decision and make it into the optimal DFS lineup just through, pure volume of significant strikes landed. Watching the tape on Gabe Green, obviously you've got to go back if you want to get any significant amount of tape to pre-UFC days for both of these guys. I saw some pretty bad takedown defense from Gabe Green where he was just kind of put on his back real easily. Now, I don't know if Phil Rowe is going to be the guy to be able to take advantage of that, but he does have a number of submission wins on his record as a pro. A lot of, first round rear naked chokes, and some of those can be where you're kind of dominating a fight and you just finish it that way when, you knock him down with punches and go to the mat afterward. But I do think Phil Rowe possibly has a path to victory on the mat here, as well as I would give him the slight advantage on the feet, especially with the giant reach advantage. I just think he's a little bit more talented. So I do like Philip Rowe here. Title, what do you see in between Rowe and Green?
Yeah, so this is such a coin flip fight to me, depending on the winner. Like, I wanted to hear a strong conviction from you or Joey. I got a little stronger one from you with the underdog. Joey, I was hoping to hear a little more from, but because this is one of the best fights to target in DFS on the card. Yep. There's 8,000 Gabe Green is on DraftKings, 8,200 for Rowe, 16 and 14 respectively on FanDuel. It's supposed to end inside the distance. They're pretty confident about that. So it's hard to get away from this fight. I'm going to have plenty of exposure, but it doesn't sound like anyone's really overly confident in one side. So I'm going to lean Rowe as the dog on DraftKings and tournaments because he's higher price for 200 and the dog. So I expect more ownership to go to Green. I lean with Green in cash games just based on Vegas odds, but I don't have a strong lean on it really. I can't decide who I like winning. I think they both, like you guys said, can brawl. If they connect, whoever connects first and lands clean, both have sloppy striking defense, like you said. The other can go out quick. So I'm going to have plenty of exposure to both. I have leans on other fights that I like a lot more. I'm just going to get overweight on both guys because I expect a fun fight.
Yeah, a couple stats of note here, if you will. Rowe has finished his last 7 fights inside the distance. Of course, 6 of those 7 fights were outside the UFC against, I guess, lesser competition to some degree. And also 4 of those 7 finishes were by submission. You can get him to finish this fight by submission around plus 700 for a guy that's finished over half of his last 7 fights by submission. I'll take a shot there against a guy with Green, who I don't think has any particularly good wrestling or submission defense. I think plus 700, if you want to take a little flyer on Rowe to finish this fight via submission, I kind of like that one a little bit. Joey, final thoughts here, Rowe versus Green, or should we move on?
Yeah, I don't have I'm not going to be betting on this fight. I'm just going to enjoy it. But definitely has potential of fireworks for sure.
So if you had a bet, it would go to inside the distance or go to decision. Are you with Vegas inside the distance?
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I am. Go ahead, Joey. I think that was a question.
Same.
Yeah, both of you. Yep.
Yeah, and 8,200 for Rowe, 8,000 for Green. Title, I think you want one of these two fighters. I lean Rowe in a lot of lineups, right? If you're playing multiple lineups or even just one, I think you want to take a shot on one of these two guys.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely overweight on this fight. I probably won't be 100% in my 150 or 20 entry max. I might be, but you definitely want to have a ton of pieces.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to this one. I think it'll be a good battle. Let's go to another interesting one, I think. Ricky Simon and Brian Kelleher. Simon, pretty big favorite here, minus 240 to 250, kind of depending on where you look. Kelleher, no slouch. I think it seems like Vegas, the odds makers expect Simon to perhaps control this one on the ground. Simon, a pretty heavy wrestling attack. 17-3 overall. Both of these guys have a lot of UFC experience. I think they're both 3-2 in their last 5 UFC fights. Ricky Simon, rather, one of the more prolific takedown artists in the entire UFC roster, frankly. 7 takedowns per 15 minutes. So this guy likes to get it to the mat, uses ground and pound. Not really a submission guy. He just kind of wants to, you're sort of your prototypical lay and pray type fighter. Not my preferred style of fighting, but hey, it's worked well for Simon. And then you've got, of course, Kelleher, kind of more of a little bit of a brawler. He's got some good technical skills. He can get hit too. Striking defense, not the greatest. So yeah, on a card where we don't see a ton of huge favorites, Simon actually comes in as I think the third or fourth highest favorite on this 12 fight card. Joey, Ricky, Simon, Brian Kelleher. What are you seeing here?
All right, so this fight actually did get moved up because
fight.
No, it's all good. I'm just saying this fight is now on the main card for all of you.
Bobby Green.
Yeah, Bobby Green fainted backstage, so that fight's off. But so this is the second or third time this fight has been booked, and Ricky basically has got steamed this last fight the most. Basically because he won. He stepped in and beat a late replacement his last time out. You know, Simon's a great wrestler, Simone, but he does somewhat struggle on the feet. He struggled on the feet versus Ray Borg, who's not really known for a stand-up. He struggled versus Rob Font, who's a good boxer. Uriah Faber knocked him out. I mean, he did beat Ray Borg via split decision, but he really struggled in that fight. He obviously prefers wrestling, but Kelleher's a pretty good wrestler himself. He wrestled in high school and probably college. His wrestling defense is okay. He likes to defend the takedowns by throwing standing guillotine chokes, which he's shown and done a couple times. I know his game plan probably is to stop Simone's wrestling, keep him standing, and I think he definitely has the advantage on the feet. He's a much better striker, has much more power. He likes to switch stances sometimes. He is a skilled grappler. You know, as for defensively standing, he's not that clean, easy to hit, for sure. He's always moving. If we go back to that Cody Stamen fight, when he fought Cody Stamen, Stamen's a very good wrestler, and he only had success on a couple takedowns there.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian, you know, he has a very good track record. He's fought a lot of good fighters even before the UFC. He fought Jimmy Rivera before the UFC on the regional scene. He fought Julio Arce twice, beat him both times. He fought Iri Uricanta in the UFC. Barrero, who was a former champion. Odie Osborne, and then obviously Stamen. You know, I think Brian definitely has a better track record, has fought better opponents to date. If Kelleher can stop Simone's takedowns, this is his fight to lose, in my opinion. I think these odds are way off. Simone should be maybe minus 150, 160-ish, not minus 275 here. So I locked in boom, Brian, boom, Kelleher money line, plus 235 on Thursday night via FanDuel.
I like that a lot. This line struck me as being just kind of out of control for Simone as well. Mispronounce his name, obviously, to open this segment. You're with me, Joey, where if this fight was just pure kickboxing, if wrestling wasn't allowed, Kelleher would be a substantial favorite. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure I wasn't off on my assessment there, because that's the conclusion I came to watching the tape on these two. And I think Kelleher, he just generally goes a little bit underrated because he doesn't look super athletic, frankly. You know, he kind of just looks like your everyman a little bit. He's not great at any one thing. He's just never really had any hype behind him, but he's been good. He's fought really tough competition. He's showed out well almost every fight. And I would expect the same thing here. I think this one kind of seems closer to a toss-up. I know Simone, you know, he'll probably get some takedowns, but the fact that he's averaging, 7 takedowns per 15 minutes, that kind of means people are getting back up too, right? You can't get 7 takedowns if you're holding people down and people can't get up. So I think Kelleher will get taken down, but he'll get back up too and be able to kind of do his own thing on the feet. So I like the upset here. I do think, Kelleher, if he can stop takedowns frequently, maybe a chance at a finish via KO, TKO, if he's stuffing those takedowns. Simone, sometimes you see them putting their face right in the area where an uppercut or a knee could land, and maybe Simone hits the mat here. So I do kind of like Kelleher by TKO, KO. You can get him like plus 900. Seems pretty decent to me if you want to take a shot there. Simone decision. I think if he wins, it's going to be by decision. You can get that around minus 120. So if you're doing the Simone side, I don't mind taking that instead of laying the minus 260 or whatever it may be. Title DFS perspective here. We do have Simone 9,100, one of the more expensive fighters on the slate. Makes sense. He is one of the bigger favorites. Kelleher 7,100. I like that, certainly as an underdog, considering that both Joey and I think he's got a decent chance to win this fight and maybe finish it early, perhaps.
Yeah, Kelleher is always game. He always seems to get disrespected from the bookmakers. Always a dog, but he's going to come in and fight for your money every time, which is something you always look for in a dog. I'm a little higher on Simone than I think you guys are. he definitely needs to get to his wrestling and chain takedowns, but I think he's just going to try and close the distance, make it a grimy fight, take Kelleher to the ground. I expect Kelleher to get up a lot too. Like you said, Simone isn't the best at just holding his opponents down like Stamen was against Kelleher, but you don't want that in DFS. You want the opponent to get back up so you can throw him back on the mat again and rinse and repeat 7 to 10 times and get your points that way. It's a fight that's supposed to go to decision, but like I said earlier, there's only 3 fights that are supposed to end inside the distance. So this is one of the higher paced decision fights that I think Brian Kelleher, absolutely. If he can stuff these takedowns, keep it at distance, I think he can eventually finish Simone on the feet. But I think Simone's going to get the takedowns. He's going to have success, just wear on him a little bit. I have interest in both guys for sure, though. Kelleher is the dog at his price. I absolutely have interest in. He has KO for that, for being a dog too. So I like that. He has a clear path to victory. Keep it on the feet. Whereas Simone, I mean, he has his clear path too of scoring well. A lot of takedowns. Now you get top control time on DraftKings too, which helps them. So I think both sides are here. I do lean Simone getting the win, but for the prices and the odds, Kelleher is definitely the better value, like you guys are saying.
Yeah, certainly the way I'm leaning there, I'll have more exposure to Kelleher than I will have Simone. Real quickly, Title, we've seen some scoring changes. I don't know when exactly those were implemented for MMA DFS. It's been a few cards now. What have you noticed, through these first 3 or 4 cards of DFS scoring changes? One thing that seems to be the case for me, you don't get points for like submission attempts anymore. So some of the guys that get takedowns and try to submit their opponents, they can end up with some pretty low scores. But the guys with a lot of top control that land little short strikes, that sometimes those weren't recorded as significant before, but now you get points for all strikes, significant or not. I've noticed some of the kind of the lay and pray wrestler guys ending up with some pretty big scores if they can get a lot of top control. Anything that you've taken away from the new DK MMA DFS scoring?
Yeah, so after the New Year's, they put in the top control time and they took out advances on the ground. So some people that got like 10, and I like what they did too. And they also added in the finish inside a minute. You get the bonus 25 points, I believe it is. So I've recognized right away, if you finish your opponent inside the minute like Sandhagen did, we had another one too. Even though Sandhagen pretty much landed one knee, he finished inside the minute. He got the knockdown, got the win. So you get a finisher inside the minute, it's going to be on the optimal. That's how it should be. I like that they did that. As far as wrestlers and top control, yeah, you said it best. If you can get them on the mat now early and control them for 4 minutes, they can be on the optimal. Whereas in the past, I remember the Park fight against I think it was Phillips, where he literally was he was probably had 14 minutes of top control. Somehow they didn't give him any significant strikes, and he scored poorly. Now they added in strikes in general with significant strikes with top control. I like what they did for scoring, mixing it up, and people that absolutely dominate the fight now usually get rewarded. So I like what they did.
Yeah, my favorite change was the bonus for ending the fight in the first minute, because it was just, that's the best fight you can have, right? Is to knock a guy out in the first minute of the fight with a clean knockout where you don't take any damage. And you would like lose to someone who took the full first round 5 minutes and took damage, and got someone at the end. It's like, that just didn't make any sense. So yeah, good changes overall, I think, from DK in terms of their MMA scoring. We'll keep it moving here to the next fight of the night. Another one that I think should be pretty good. Chris Gutierrez and Andre Yule. Another one that, I think we should see some fireworks in this one. Again, on a night where not the most exciting fights in the world, but this one should be pretty good. Andre Yule, he's plus 120-ish. Gutierrez minus 130 to minus 140. So again, predicted to be another close fight, another one where you can kind of go either direction in DFS, I think, depending on kind of our leans that we've got here. And Joey, what are you seeing between these two guys? You have a lean between Yule and Gutierrez.
Yeah, so first, this is at catchweight 140. This was scheduled earlier, or Yule was scheduled to fight Stamen last week, and then he got COVID, so they pushed it back. So these guys, 2 guys with really good nicknames. First off, Yule, Mr. Highlight, Gutierrez, El Guapo. So Yule, he comes in here with a new opponent. He was training to fight Cody Stamen the whole time. So Stamen's a good stand-up fighter, but preferably a wrestler. Gutierrez is much more of a primary striker here. Yep. So He does have a very big reach advantage. I think almost 7-inch reach advantage here. He's very fast, likes to stay at range, go in and out, move a lot by picking apart his opponents. He does throw decent output, but he sometimes has gas tank issues late in fights. As for Gutierrez, he's another fighter out of Factory X. He loves to throw leg kicks and has proved it to be very successful in a lot of his fights. And I'm pretty sure he's going to go here early and often in this fight.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested to see if Yule – this might be a live betting spot. I'd be very interested to see if Yule checks the leg kicks. As in previous fights, he has taken the damage, and it really has affected his output the longer the fight has gone on. Gutierrez is probably the better boxer. He should be able to pressure Andre, but with the reach advantage, I'm not exactly confident in the stand-up there. I definitely think Andre is the better grappler. So based on the strength of schedule, I lean Gutierrez. Yule, he's either lost or won via split decision in the last 5 of 6 fights. So, it's kind of scary if you're really backing Yule here. I don't know because of the change in competition and whatnot, but Gutierrez has won 3 straight. His only 3 losses have come to some very good fighters. He lost to Barcelos, who is a stud. He lost to Timur Valiev, who we just saw last weekend, performed very, very impressive. But I'm probably off this fight, but I have a hard lean to El Guapo.
Yeah, I'm leaning Gutierrez here too. He seems like he's improving still to me. His striking looks pretty crisp. Like you mentioned, the level of competition has been relatively high. And you look at, just like the stats, which I think I'm much more of a kind of look at the tape and try to figure out the matchup than I am look at the stats guy. But still, Gutierrez facing some pretty good competition in the UFC, a nearly 2-to-1 strikes landed per strike absorbed ratio. You don't see that very often. So he has been efficient. His striking defense has been good, and he's landing on the feet. Sometimes you see wrestlers have high ratios there because obviously if you're in top control, you're landing strikes and not really absorbing a lot typically. But this is all on the feet, right? He's not a guy that takes the fights to the mat. So he's been outstriking his opponents consistently. I think he can do that here. He does have a significant reach advantage, which I guess is something of a concern, but that's the case for him in a lot of fights, and he overcomes that without any problem. So some fighters, it just doesn't bother him, right? They're just used to fighting that way, and I think that's the case, at least in my opinion, with Gutierrez. Title DFS perspective here, we do have Gutierrez 8,400, Yule 7,800. We're seeing this with a lot of fights on this card where a lot of guys kind of clustered around that 8K mark, right? Where you can make a lot of different style, or not different style, but just different combinations of lineups on this card. You have a lean between Gutierrez and Andre Yule here.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be primarily standing on the feet at distance, going to decision. So I always like to avoid those fights. I'll be underweight. When it comes to who's going to win, I'm going to lean with a guy that throws nasty leg kicks, and that's Gutierrez. He had the better strength of schedule. I think he gives Yule problems with the leg kicks, slows down his movement. If anything, Gutierrez in tournaments is fine if you want to get a low-owned guy, because I think you've seen in the MMA, like if you chop down that front leg early, they cannot move. And then they're a sitting duck out there, and anyone can finish anybody at that point, really, if you keep going to it. I think Gutierrez is going to just hammer that leg. It's like, I agree with Joey, though. It's a great live betting situation because if Yule checks the leg kicks, has good movement, and can avoid most of them, he should be able to have range and piece up Gutierrez and just win a decision that way. So it's more of a live betting situation. For DFS, I'm definitely underweight. I don't like either of these guys as much. Although I will say Yule is only $12 on FanDuel, and for only a 120 dog in a fight that's supposed to go to a decision, I'm fine with that just because he's so cheap, priced around other bigger dogs. But it's not a fight I have a lot of interest in for DFS.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It is between -170 and -190 to go to decision, which those are pretty high numbers for guy. We got 2 decent strikers here. Kind of surprised it's quite that high to go to decision. I certainly wouldn't be betting that myself. But from a DFS perspective, if you trust those numbers, it's a little bit difficult to roster these 2 guys just because they're probably not going to get a lot of other points other than significant strikes landed. We do expect this one to stay on the feet. I think it'll be an entertaining fight. I'm looking forward to watching it. But Title, I think you make good points from a DFS perspective. It does make sense to be a little bit underweight, although I will have some exposure to Gutierrez myself. Joey, final thoughts between these two? Anything else to add?
No, not really. Definitely a live betting spot, depending on if Yule checks some kicks.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on to Pollyanna Vianna and Mallory Martin. Obviously, a women's fight here. Another close one. Mallory Martin minus 130 to win this one. News and notes. I don't have a ton from either of these two fighters, two younger women's fighters. This is at 115. Both decent record, 11-4 for Vianna, 7-3 for Mallory Martin. They do both have significant UFC experience. We've seen Vianna is 2-3 in her last 5 UFC fights, whereas Mallory Martin 2-1. She is coming off a win against Hannah Cyphers. I'll throw it to you first, Joey. Do you have a lean between these two?
Probably not really. Vianna, she should have the advantage on the feet here, but her striking defense is not good either. She keeps her hands down, chin up. Even she fought Hannah Cyphers as well, and she clipped her. Not that Martin is as explosive on the feet, but Pollyanna has not impressed me in her 5 UFC fights to date. All 11 of her wins are via sub, which is kind of interesting. As for Mallory Martin, she did just get her brown belt in BJJ. She'll probably look to take this to the ground and control it for the ground as long as she can. She does sometimes get roped into fighting on the feet, though, which could be scary here in this matchup. But I really see this as Mallory Martin probably on top of Pollyanna for most of the fight. It's going to be boring, and the longer it goes, the better it is for Mallory. I normally prefer to just stay away from women's fight, and personally, this one I want no part of.
That's where I'm at too. Just no real big insight into this one. Sometimes it's that way. You're right. You're looking at the tape and you just can't see a whole lot there that you feel confident in. Title, lead us to the promised land between these two women.
So at first, most of the week, I had this as pretty much a fade. But the more I looked at it, I expect one of these girls to dominate, whether it's Vianna stuffing the takedowns, keeping on the feet, and having her way against Martin, or Martin taking it to the ground, having a lot of top control, ground and pound a little bit, and scoring decent. Again, this is a card where we don't have a lot of fights ending inside the distance. I expect lower scores than we're used to. 8,600 for Martin, 7,600 for Vianna. They falls in the price range where one of them could definitely end in the optimal if the fight goes one way like I kind of expect. So I'm not going to go crazy on it. I think people are going to overlook this more than they should, though. So I'm going to get a little overweight, I think, on both girls, or close to the field at least, because it's a woman's fight. We've seen anything can happen in women's fight. I mean, one of these girls could get an armbar from guard in the first round, and I wouldn't be surprised at all, and absolutely break the slate. So it's a very interesting fight. I think Vianna has the edge on the feet, Martin as the edge on wrestling, and for their prices, I mean, they're both priced fine, and they could, even in a decision, they could score 80, and 80 could be enough to be on the optimal. So I'm with you that I don't think it's going to probably end inside the distance, but I'm also just skeptical on this whole fight because I think it could go in so many different ways. So I want pieces of it for sure.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'll probably be mostly fading it myself, but I do think it'll be one of the least popular fights on the slate for sure. So you will get contrarian. I think going with either of these two fighters, if you want to go a little bit against the grain for DFS purposes, I don't really have much betting wise, probably staying it away. Looks like it's about minus 200 to go the distance, so not super enticed there. Let's go to what I expect to be a better fight. The biggest favorite on the card, Bilal Muhammad, who's coming in between minus 450 and minus 550, I'm seeing now, against Diego Lima, who I believe is a late addition to the card. Is that right, Joey?
Lima's a late addition?
He's been on all week. I could be wrong on that.
Anyway, Bilal Muhammad, the biggest favorite by far. So we are going to see him come in, I would assume, pretty heavily owned here. I've been impressed with him his last 2 or 3 fights. He's been pretty spectacular. Do you see this line being accurate? Do you think Lima has a chance here, Joey, to win this fight and take the upset?
I mean, minus 500 is a little crazy for, as you know me, a guy that rarely finishes people. I hate laying them that heavy chalk. But
sure.
Lima's off a long layoff. His last fight was October of 2019. He is a BJJ black belt. He is solid on his feet. I'm not crazy about his takedown defense. And Bilal's a guy who loves to use the takedowns. I mean, Muhammad, all-around better fighter, in my opinion. He is somebody where we basically know what he's going to do every fight. He uses his cardio, uses his wrestling almost every fight. He's solid on his feet, and even versus big strikers, he knows his way around it and eventually gets probably a decision win. He only really struggles with elite Muay Thai guys, someone that's going to defend takedowns, force the fight to be a full stand-up the whole time. And this is not going to happen here. Lima's going to get taken down. I think, like, Muhammad should be fair enough to be a favorite, but minus 500, come on. I always say this, like, Bilal is a decision machine. 12 of 17 wins via decision. 7 of his last 8 all via decision. I mean, I can't lay the minus 500. My pick here would probably be Muhammad via decision because Lima really, he rarely gets finished as well. And I don't think Muhammad does enough to, he's not going to knock him out. Maybe he'll get him to the ground and get a sub, but I really doubt it. So Muhammad via decision is my best bet here, minus 130-ish.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. Muhammad, to me, I don't think he's some world beater. I don't think he'll ever win a title, but he seems like a fighter who has really no true weaknesses, right? And I'm not going to lay the minus 500 either. Like you said, I think win a decision, if you want to bet on Muhammad, I think win the decision around minus 130, minus 140 seems like a better. It's just miserable having minus 500 and, you gotta have $500 out there to win 100. It's just not a fun sweat ever.
Can we give Muhammad a ranked opponent yet, or what? What's going on here?
Yeah, I've been impressed with him. I don't think he's going to lay an egg, right? Like he can kind of win this fight probably maybe anywhere. And so he's smart enough to be in there and change his game plan if he needs to be to win the fight where he wasn't needing to. So I do think he's one of the guys that when he's a big favorite, he'll probably come through and get the job done. That's just kind of what he does. So, I don't, again, if you want to throw him in a parlay or something to increase those odds for you, sure. But minus 500 does feel a little bit rich for he's just not a dominant type of fighter. Hard to lay those big of odds, but title, we will see Muhammad, I assume, come in very highly owned, given the huge favorite that he is. I think it's possible, though, that he disappoints somewhat from a DFS perspective. If he's not able to finish this fight, I don't think he's going to have, 10 plus minutes or something like that of top control time. It's not really the way he typically fights. He'll probably get some takedowns. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on Muhammad? Are you willing to pay what is a pretty steep price tag on him in DFS? And I think you'll see him be pretty heavily owned too. 9,200. He's coming in. Lima on the other side, 7K on DraftKings.
Yeah, so I'm with Joey Werk on this one. I mean, Muhammad's just a decision fighter. That's what he is now. Yep. He's good, but the UFC just keeps giving him layups and easy fights. I mean, this guy should be getting a ranked opponent. He's already he's winning almost every fight pretty convincingly by decision, but it's time to start giving this guy a threat. Minus 500. Yeah, there's no way I'd bet that. I like the minus 130 by decision because I have Muhammad winning by decision. And there's other killers at the top of this card that we'll get to. Usman's 9K, Vieira's 9.3K. I have a hard time paying 9.2K for a guy that I expect to win a decision. So I'm going to be underweight for sure. I don't think Lima wins, so I don't like him even as a dog, but I'm definitely lower on Muhammad, definitely lower on this fight in general because I think it's a decision like all Muhammad fights are.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I feel relatively comfortable fading Muhammad for DFS purposes. Hopefully he won't, even if he gets the win, maybe he'll get less than 100 and he won't be in that optimal lineup at the end of the night. Let's go to what I think is another, at least from my perspective, pretty interesting fight. That's Anthony Hernandez and Rodolfo Vieira. Vieira undefeated in his MMA career, 7-0, 2-0 in the UFC, but he's not some young buck, right? I think he's 30, 31 years old. Normally you see an undefeated fighter that's only 7-0 and they're 21 or 22 and they're just coming up. Not the case for Vieira. Nevertheless, he is a big favorite here, second biggest favorite on the card. Minus 400 to minus 450. I'm seeing most places. Kind of a wrestling specialist, a true wrestling specialist. It looks like to me, tons of takedown attempts. I mean, he's just takedown after takedown. Doesn't even really try to strike and doesn't look super great when he does. He'll face obviously Anthony Hernandez. 7-2. So again, two, I guess, relatively inexperienced guys here. Hernandez, much more. Oh, he has wrestling too, but I would say he's much more of a striker than Vieira is. Coming off a tough loss to Kevin Holland, who just ran through everybody in 2020. So I don't hold too much against him for that quick loss there. This is another one where this line feels a little steep to me. I know Vieira's, kind of predicted to get this fight to the ground over and over again, but he also does not have great top control in his two fights that I watch. I mean, the guy's getting back up to their feet regularly. Vieira just dives right back in there, kind of almost haphazardly for takedowns is what I would call it. Joey, do I have this one wrong? Because I'm seeing maybe Hernandez has a chance in this one.
I think Vieira will be someone to fade later in his career. I don't think this is the fight to fade him. He is huge for this weight class. He's 7-0 as a pro.
He's a man. He's a grown ass.
Yeah, he's
grown man.
Yeah. He's 7-0. He's really a sub specialist. 7 victories, 6 are by sub, 1 knockout. He is a 5-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. He's won multiple grappling gold medals. This guy's really good. Additionally, he has great cardio. Great wrestling. He averages over 6 takedowns a fight. Yeah. He almost has a 50% accuracy on those takedowns. And as for Fluffy, he may have the advantage on the feet, but I'm just worried about how long he can keep it there. Marquez Perez took him down, eventually got a sub. And Rodolfo is much superior to Marquez Perez.
Yep.
I understand that Fluffy was the former LFA middleweight champion. He only had 1 fight at LFA, and it was for the belt. He used his grappling to beat another UFC fighter in Brandon Allen. He does a lot of the same things that Vieira does. I just don't think as good. He's a solid wrestler with good takedowns and good grappling, but not as good as Vieira. I truly think, his main advantage here would be to keep the fight standing. I'm just not sure how long he can do that. Vieira has shown to get touched up when the fight is on the feet. So, Safarov clocked him a couple times, and Safarov is not very good. But altogether, I definitely love Vieira here. I just think he's a higher caliber fighter. I think he probably gets it to the ground early in the first round, probably less than a minute in, and he'll win via sub. That number is -200.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's kind of chalky. So, I wouldn't probably advise to take that. But if anything, that would be my look.
Yeah. Again, I personally just think Hernandez has a little bit better chance than you do, but I get it. Vieira should be, I think, one of the most popular fighters, perhaps after Usman on this entire slate, given that, this fight is expected to be finished inside the distance. He's a huge favorite. Title, I assume you're pretty high on Vieira for DFS purposes.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like I'm the same as Joey on pretty much all of these, but sure. I think Vieira in this fight, I definitely like it. But I do agree that in the future, there's going to be times to fade Vieira for sure. He's definitely a grown man in this division, but he's a grown man for how he looks. It's not like he fights on the feet like a grown man fights, because on the feet, he can get bullied by, I'll take guys at the lower weight classes for sure that could bully.
Well, he doesn't even really try to strike. He's just...
Exactly. Yeah. Because he knows he can't. But there's going to be a time against an opponent that's going to stuff his takedowns once he gets higher level, and then just absolutely piece him up on the feet. But I don't think today's one of those fights. Have 100% exposure to this fight. So get some Hernandez if you want to play it safe with your bankroll, and that, because I'll have a ton of Vieira, but someone's going to sleep or someone's getting finished in this fight. Vieira gets it on the ground. It's only a matter of time until he subs Hernandez. Every fight starts on the feet, though. So Fernandez can clock him, stun him a little bit, stuff a couple takedowns early or something. You never know. It's MMA. It's anything can happen. Hernandez isn't as bad. I'm with you, DC, where I think he has a little more of a chance than I think Joey Werk's giving him, but I still like Vieira in this fight. I think once he gets it to the ground, his submission game is definitely next level. So I expect a Vieira by sub, but I would not be shocked if Hernandez went out there and absolutely starched Vieira early somehow and put him away, like I think a lot of people would be.
Yeah, that's kind of the clear path to victory. I actually think if you want to take a super long, Hernandez via KO in like the first round, if he can land something early. Joey, my question for you, you're more of an expert than I am on these fighters. Does Hernandez have the power to stun Vieira? Because Vieira clearly is willing to eat shots on his way into takedowns. He just is. He just doesn't care. He's, as we said, kind of a grown-ass man who I think he thinks he can just kind of take those shots on his way in. So far, obviously, he's proven that he can. He's 7-0, hasn't really been in any danger. Does Hernandez have the power, if he can catch him when Vieira's coming in, to hurt him significantly enough to swing the tide in his favor? That's a big question mark for me if you're kind of hoping for a Hernandez upset victory here.
Yeah, he probably doesn't have one punch knockout power, that's for sure. But he can definitely get him, I guess, via ground and pound, knock him to the ground and then eventually just keep pounding him there. He only has one KO victory on his record. Yeah. Most of them are subs. So he normally, knocks somebody down, goes to the ground, and then club and sub, I call it. So, but with Vieira being so good on the ground, I don't think he's going to sub him, so.
Yeah, I just can't get the picture out of my head where, like, Vieira's eye, when he eventually got the submission, but, like, the ref was going to stop. I think it was his last fight out. I mean, the ref was stopping that fight. It looked like Jane's eye last week. So, I mean, he could have definitely got that out, but then you get him to the ground regardless, Vieira. That just shows how next level he is. So I'm with you on Vieira on this fight. I think we all agree, but we all agree that Vieira he's not going to be an undefeated guy that's going to have the belt around his waist anytime soon, I don't think.
Yeah. I personally think Vieira is just a little bit overrated, given that he's just so one-dimensional. He does not have good striking. I have trouble laying -400 on a fighter who is bad on the feet, and I don't think Hernandez is a bad fighter. So I don't mind the upset there. I totally get it going with the Vieira side, though. We'll keep moving to getting close, I think, to the main card. Makai, Patolo, and Julian Marquez. -160 here. Joey, I'll throw it right to you as we keep the show moving. Marquez, Patolo, do you have a lean on this one?
Yeah, so these guys are two Dana White Contender Series fighters here. Marquez is off 2.5-year layoff, what kind of scares me. It was a split decision loss to Alessio Di Chirico. He might have won that fight. It was really close, but depending on who you watch, Before that, he had 5 finishes straight. He looks huge next to Mackey at the weigh-ins, but he has a 4-inch height advantage, 3-inch reach advantage in this fight, but he's very hittable and somewhat stationary. I'm interested also to see his gas tank, as he has problems with that later in the fights, and I'm not sure that improved off this long layoff. As for Mackey, this is basically a must-win situation for him. A loss could end his UFC tenure. He's 1-3 in the UFC after the Contender Series win, his only win over Charles Byrd. He won over Charles Byrd, who has since retired from fighting. I remember that fight. Charles got clipped, basically gave up. He left very uninspired effort in the cage there.
Yep.
So last time out, he beat my guy Impa, or he lost to my guy Impa Consagane via decision. Impa basically just controlled the pace, threw more output, but Mackey was solid in that fight. Don't get me wrong, Mackey's nickname is Coconut Bombs. It's not by accident. He throws haymakers. I expect these two to stand and bang most of the fight, ending with somebody's face down in the canvas. I'm just not sure which one. So I don't think Marquez wins minutes here, and I'm definitely scared of the long layoff. So this, if I was chosen a side, it's got to be dog or pass, but I definitely like the under 2.5 rounds at -125 here.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all either. I think one of these fighters could very well end up going to sleep. You mentioned earlier, 2 good nicknames. This is another one. Coconut Bombs versus the Cuban Missile Crisis. Doesn't get much better than that in terms of 2 fighters' nicknames. And I think it's appropriate for what we expect from this fight. Hopefully an exciting one here. Title, probably a decent one to target here. Again, you've mentioned a couple times, not many fights on this card predicted to finish inside the distance. This is one of them. Maki and Marquez. Marquez actually a lot more expensive on DraftKings, relatively speaking, 8,700 compared to 7,500 for Patolo. Do you have a lean on this one? Are you willing to go with the underdog? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I promised I did all my research and everything's up on the site and the playbook too, because I'm the same as Joey Werk again, and it sounds like you too. It's a fun fight. I expect someone to go to sleep in this fight. Maki Patolo, like you said, the prices are 8,700 for Marquez, 7,500 for Patolo. Patolo is going to be a lot more heavily owned just because of the price disparity.
Yep.
I've heard a lot of people around the industry on Patolo just because Marquez the long layoff in the price, good favorites up top. So I expect Marquez to be a lot lower owned, and that's my lean in tournaments, just from a pure game theory DFS perspective, where I think it's a coin flip fight too. I don't think Marquez should be like a minus 160 favorite. I'm thinking more minus 125 after a long layoff and a lot of unknowns. But anytime that I think it's going to be over a 2x ownership gap just because of pricing. So anytime it's like that, give me more leverage on Marquez with the height advantage. Someone's going to sleep in this fight. So I'll have the guy that's going to be lower owned and harder to get, but I'll still have plenty of Mackie Patolo too, because this guy does throw bombs. He's fought a lot more recently than Marquez, so I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Patolo and Marquez pretty early either. Have a lot of exposure to this fight. Should be a fun one. You don't want to go and take a bathroom break, get your popcorn or anything during this one, because it could be over by the time you come back.
Absolutely. And I don't think you'll want to do it in the next fight either. Ian Heinisch and Kevin Gastelum. Gastelum coming in around minus 220 here. Gastelum, to me, kind of a hard guy to know a little bit what to expect from fight to fight. He'll look really, really good at times and then kind of just come out and lay an egg a little bit, disappointing performances. So at least to me, he's kind of an inconsistent guy. I mean, he took Adesanya to the distance, looked good there, and then disappointing loss to both Darren Till and Josh Hermanson. On the other hand, Ian Heinisch coming off a pretty impressive victory over Meerschaert. Joey, what are you seeing between these two guys? Do you think the line is justified being minus 220-ish for Gastelum at this point?
I mean, so Heinisch is a guy I personally root for. He's been through a lot in life. He was addicted to drugs. He went to jail eventually, and he went over to Thailand before the whole pandemic. He had a whole camp over there. Then he fought Gerald Meerschaert, and he looked really, really good.
I thought he looked great in that fight, honestly.
Yeah, but this is a step up in competition compared to Gerald Meerschaert, that's for sure. I think he has the advantage if he gets this to the ground. He does average a little bit over a takedown per 15 minutes. He has a 2-inch height advantage, almost a 2-inch reach advantage as well. His striking is good. His defensive striking, another thing that's questionable. As for Gastelum, I mean, man, oh man, this guy is like one of those guys that constantly disappoints me.
That's what I think too, man.
Like going back even to his tough days. Like, I know he won the whole Ultimate Fighter, but that whole Ultimate Fighter, that whole season was very disappointing. Uriah Hall, everybody on that season, very disappointing. But I'm happy, he made weight in this to start. Truly he should be fighting a weight class down, but he has constant trouble making weight. He's lost 3 in a row coming into this fight, but I mean, they're good competition. Izzy Adesanya, Darren Till, and last fight out, he got lost in the first round to Jack Hermanson. Yeah. He has good boxing footwork. He likes to stay in the pocket and get into the war, and he has very good fast hand speed. But as for cardio, I give the probably advantage to Gastelum as well. He's been in some wars, and he doesn't really seem to gas. This is a tough pick for me. I probably like Heinisch, but I like Heinisch's heart, but I think Kelvin is the more skilled fighter. So I guess I lean Kelvin, but like last week, he kind of reminds me of Michael Johnson. He's just not somebody I could trust, somebody I feel confident backing at a minus 200 favorite. So I'll be off this one. I'll just enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm taking the dog here. I'm going with Heinisch. I think he looked legitimately improved to me in his last fight. There's a chance that those improvements, he builds upon them further, and we see another kind of best version of Heinisch that we've seen. And I've seen enough from Gastelum. I kind of just want to bet against him when he's a big favorite, because even like you said, you should be fighting a weight class down. It's not like he's like super cut for this weight class either.
Absolutely.
I just don't trust him. So I'll take a dog against him, especially a guy like Heinisch who looks like he's on the ascension, right? Maybe a little bit underrated still. I know if you look at kind of the body of work, the skills do seem to favor Gastelum, but I think Heinisch probably just in a better place in his life as kind of a fighter on the up and coming. And, Gastelum's been beat 3 fights in a row. I know tough competition, but that can be tough to come back from. There can be doubts creeping in your head as a fighter. And I think Heinisch will be game for this fight. I think both of these guys are going to land at times. I think it should be fairly close. So I'm taking the dog with Heinisch. I'll be pretty heavy on him for DFS purposes as well. Title. Interesting to hear where you land on this one. We do have Gastelum, again, one of the more expensive fighters, 8,800. Heinisch, 7,400. I like that price for Heinisch, along with Kelleher. He's kind of the other dog that I'm looking at to be able to afford some of the studs on this slate for DFS purposes.
Yeah, I'm also on Heinisch. That's my lean, mainly because of the price difference. But I also I think this should be more of a -150 gas.
That's what I think.
A lot closer. Yeah, and I think I'm higher on Heinisch than a lot of people are too. I had a ton of exposure last time against Meerschaert, had him winning too. He looked really good. He just seems like a guy that just goes undervalued, underappreciated. He has good wrestling, so if he gets it down to the mat, I think he has the edge. If he can keep it at distance more so with Gastelum, use his range, you don't want to get into a boxing phone booth type of fight with Gastelum because, like Joey said, his hands are too fast. He holds a lot of power. So sure. I think Heinisch fights a smarter game plan, doesn't do that as much. If Gastelum was a weight division down, like you guys said, this guy would be a major problem because he definitely could get more shredded, lose some of the fat a little bit, and just, I think, be a problem. But obviously, he can't do that. I don't know, weight cutting issues, whatever it is. But I like Heinisch as the dog. I think the price difference is too much. I am curious what you guys think, though. Vegas thinks this fight goes to decision. I have a feeling if this fight does go to decision, that means it's a pretty boring stand-up, just trading with each other a little bit. But I know Gastelum does throw decent volume. So how do you think this fight goes, Joey and DC, whether distance or gets finished or inside the distance, goes to the decision, and how much volume is really thrown in this fight?
Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, I probably lean it goes to decision with 3 rounds. I think these guys, I don't think Heinisch will finish Gastelum. Possibly Gastelum could finish Heinisch if he clips him, but I just probably lean over and it go to decision.
Yeah, I believe it's what over -200 or right around -200 to go to decision. So normally, with 2 guys with pretty good striking, a bigger division, obviously you don't see. That's a pretty big number to go to decision. So
exactly.
Yeah. So I guess, I wouldn't want to take the favorite in Gastelum on a fight expected to go to decision here. But if Heinisch wins the upset at 7,400,
that could be enough.
Exactly. Assuming the kind of some of the studs come through, right? Because you might need that value on Heinisch there. 2 more fights to get to, including the greatest co-main event of all time, Alexa Grasso and Macy Barber. This one basically a toss-up at this point in terms of the Vegas odds. Grasso's looked pretty good recently. Macy Barber, I personally haven't been super impressed with her, but due to some fight cancellations and other stuff going on, this will be the co-main event. Barber 8-1 overall, Grasso 12-3. Joey, what are you seeing here between Barber and Grasso?
So Macy Barber's back in after basically tearing her ACL in her last fight. The referee even says it in the fight. He goes, not the ref, but the doctor says, "Oh yeah, she tore her ACL, but she's fine. Like she has a slight tear, but she's fine." So she continued to fight. Eventually, gets finished by the Happy Warrior Roxy Modafferi. But she always throws a lot of volume. She may look to get this fight to the ground, which I actually do expect that. She always moves forward. She hits hard. She's probably better in the clinch as well. As far as defensively, she definitely leaves her chin out there sometimes. And Roxy shown in the last fight, she's very touchable. Before that Roxy fight, she was even losing to basically J.J. Aldridge in that fight. J.J. clipped her a good amount of times. Eventually, she outwore her and got her by finish in the 3rd. So Grasso has far more experience for sure. She's the better technical striker and probably better grappler as well. I did hear in an interview, she said she was working hard on her takedown defense and she's going to try to keep it standing. I mean, have a little more confidence in yourself. Try. Come on, you got. But it is what it is. If she keeps this on its feet, she may end up winning this fight. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Macy's going to take her to the ground. I'm probably more higher on Macy than most. She's only 22 years old. This will be her 6th UFC fight already. Her potential is endless. End of the day, I do think Macy gets it done here. Give me the money line. It was at +108 last night. And even by KO, she's finished 5 of her 7 wins via KO. You could get +500, a little sprinkle on that. and that's where I'm going here.
Yeah, title thoughts from a DFS perspective here.
Yeah, so I don't have interest in Grasso really. I mean, because she's the more expensive too. I like the slight dog in Barber more. The problem is I think she's going to be decently popular. And with all this line movement coming in with her cheaper price tag below 8K. But Joey's pretty confident on Barber, thinks she can get the finish too. Vegas says the finish isn't crazy for Barber. I saw plus 260. So I had an underweight approach. I might be editing that and just going closer to the field. But I think she is going to be pretty popular, though, for all the reasons we said. So it's an interesting fight. I don't have much Grasso. I was hoping that Joey said it could be more of a boring decision and stuff because that's a good way to get leverage. But I think Barber is the lean for winning. And at 7,900, it's hard not to get some exposure for DFS too.
I hear you. Yeah, I don't have really much on this one. Looks pretty even to me, frankly, which the line reflects as well. I'll lean Barber with Joey, just trusting his opinion on it when I don't really have one myself. But like Joey said, buying in on the talent, because Macy Barber was hyped in like before she lost to Robertson and all that. Yeah. I mean, she was a minus 1,000 favorite that day too. Like she has all the hype in the world coming. So, I mean, if she didn't tear ACL and all this, she would not be a slight dog to Grasso. So I think that's where Joey's saying too, and I agree.
Yeah, we're going from minus 1,000 to plus 100, plus 108. Yeah, that's
crazy.
Holy.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. And the UFC themselves, they kind of know what they're doing too, elevating Barber back into the co-main event here. They obviously have faith in her. They think she's got the talent to be a star for them. Putting her on the co-main event of a big pay-per-view. They obviously think she's healthy and ready to go. They expect her to fight well here. Clearly, I think just reading the tea leaves, you can kind of say that. You throw in.
They want her to win.
They did. I think so too. So, on a fight where you're not just kind of sure which way to go, sometimes you can look into stuff like that. What does UFC want? I think they probably expect and want Macy Barber to put in a good performance here. So, if you want to lean that way, that does make some sense to me. We'll get to the main event, which is just a fascinating fight. A lot to talk about in that one. Before we do, please hit that like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this show. Let us bring these shows for free to you on most Saturday mornings. And if you want to sign up for all the content over at runpuresports.com, use promo code RPS, free entry, all one word, that will get you in an entry, a drawing for a $888 entry on, I believe that entry
Draftkings
on Monday. All right, let's get to the main event of the evening. Should be a fantastic fight here. A lot of storylines. Gilbert Burns, Kamaru Usman. These guys were supposed to fight, I believe, back in July or something like that. I think Burns got COVID before that, but he seems obviously all healed up, ready to go in this one. We've seen, Usman win basically every round in the UFC over this fantastic run that he's on right now. He does come in minus 250 to minus 260. Looks like a fairly stable line. Gilbert Burns kind of, I guess, somewhat out of nowhere these last few fights, kind of emerging as a title contender, coming off a very, very impressive victory over Tyron Woodley, who's really fallen off. These last few fights, Usman himself beat him 3 fights ago. These two used to be training partners for a long time. Usman eventually moved camps. So that's a certainly storyline. I mean, these guys have spent, I think, probably many, many hours sparring, fighting each other. So they kind of know each other's games, which I think is, you don't see that very often, especially in a title fight. So a lot of storylines here, Joey. I'm a big fan of Burns. I was very, very big on him against Woodley. He was an underdog in that fight. And, I know Usman's been fantastic. I kind of think he could be overrated just in terms of like being a truly great champion. Certainly the record shows that. What are your thoughts here? I'm interested to hear where you stand on Usman and Gilbert Burns.
All right, so Usman, he has outlanded every single opponent except for Leon Edwards back in 2015. Burns has great jiu-jitsu. I do think he has power, but enough to get Usman out of there? Probably not. He's knocked out a couple people, but no one outside of, the best name he's knocked out is Damian Maia, and he was past his prime. This is also Burns' second fifth round fight. His only one was versus Tyron Woodley. And if you know Tyron, he's a very boring fighter. He's more of a counter puncher. He doesn't throw much output at all.
Yep.
Even Burns in that fight took some time off and, just to catch up with his cardio. So Usman's fought five-round fights. He is the better wrestler and probably could get this to the ground, control the clinch if he wanted to. Outside of the Colby fight, Usman basically has a fantastic chin. He did get clipped a couple times by Colby, but eventually he won the fight and knocked out Colby. So I personally think Leon Edwards, Colby, Masvidal are all better than Gilbert Burns on the feet. Burns could clip him, knock him out, but I can't see it happening. I think the reach is going to be a problem. Usman will outland them at distance. I honestly think Usman probably grinds out a win here. It might be a little boring, but you know what? I'm going to take Usman inside the distance at plus 250. You could probably get FanDuel has a bet where you could bet fourth, fifth, and decision. That would it's probably close to there. I kind of like that bet as well.
Yeah, I get it. Let me just throw a couple things at you. Usman's, his last 5 fights. So Masvidal was a replacement for Burns, right? Back this summer. Masvidal had, what do you have, a week of notice to cut 20, 25 pounds. And Masvidal did okay in that fight. Usman did control it, but Masvidal had some moments. Covington, he eventually knocked out Covington, but Covington did land some hard bombs on Usman. He beat Woodley, but that was barely competitive. Woodley just has been pretty terrible, frankly, these last 3 or 4 fights. Gilbert Burns looked just as good, I thought, against Woodley as Usman did. Beat Dos Anjos, that was impressive, and then beat Damian Maia after that, which Maia just had no chance, right? Maia would just appear BJJ guy, and with the strength and wrestling that Usman has, it's just not really a fair fight, frankly. Again, Burns handled Maia with no problem either. You could kind of, at least for me, maybe I'm grasping at straws here, but poke some holes in each one of those wins in terms of just how impressive they were. I just haven't been that impressed with this division in general. Frankly, I think Usman's kind of had a little bit of a cakewalk at the top, as much as one can have at the top of a UFC division. So that's why I'm saying I think Usman, to me, the public views Usman as unbeatable. I don't see him in that light. Just because I don't think his wins they've been impressive when you watch them. The level of opponent and the circumstances around them, I haven't been overly impressed with. And I do think the fact that Burns has spent so much time with Usman can maybe see his takedowns coming better than some other fighters can. So I do give Burns a chance to win this fight. Title, where do you stand between Burns and Usman?
Yeah, so I've been going back and forth on this fight all week. I think Burns is a complete stud. I'm higher on him than probably most. I think this is actually the 2 best guys in the division, I think, which probably isn't the most popular take, but it's very rare you see a title fight pay-per-view where you believe the 2 best in the division are going at it. So I think it's going to be a ton of fun. I keep thinking, I view Usman like I do more Figueiredo too, where I was on Moreno against Figueiredo, where I didn't think Figueiredo was untouchable, unbeat, where you just couldn't lose like some people did. And I do think Usman's the same way. But then I go back and I think of Adesanya Costa, where I was on Costa, and then there just shows, Adesanya shows there's levels to this game. Usman definitely has the better cardio, probably better on the feet, but I do think Burns will get some respect from Usman on the feet too. I think he is good there. Usman's the better wrestler, but Burns is better grappler. So I think Burns would be fine fighting off his back in this fight, throwing up the submissions and stuff. I think this is a really, really close fight, but I'm just going to go. I think there's too much in my head with the Adesanya Costa, where I went the dog and it was just a complete one-way domination by the champ who's been there, done that, fought the who's who, where Burns is just coming up, looking really, really good coming up, but Woodley's definitely past his prime. Maia's past his prime. I like how he handled the guys, but I need to see him do it against someone like Usman. So I lean Usman in this fight, but I'm not going to be 100% to 0 Usman to Burns. I will definitely get some Burns because I think he's very live in this fight. I think we could see a war, or we could see a ground, them both being on the ground and throwing up submissions, wrestling, ground and pound. So I think it's going to be an active, fun DFS fight. You're going to want one of these guys in your lineup.
Sure.
I'm leaning Usman, but I'm definitely higher on Burns than most. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Joey, a couple questions for you. Let's say, because one interesting thing here for me is I think Gilbert Burns is his BJJ. I think it is probably, but interested to hear your opinion. Is it good enough off his back where he can perhaps focus on striking and perhaps not worry too much about being taken down because maybe he feels he can be, a threat off his back or use his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to get back to his feet? Is Burns's BJJ to that level in your opinion?
I don't think so. Okay. Maybe versus a different fighter, but not versus Kamaru Usman. Sure. I think Usman is just a superior wrestler, would be able, if he takes him down, he should be able to keep him down. Especially these two guys know each other, so I'm not exactly sure who that favors. Maybe it favors Burns, just because he's dog price, But I know they showed a little animosity as well at the weigh-ins. They didn't shake hands. They had to be separated. So this is, maybe they're pumping up the fight, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with Burns, and obviously you don't know, exactly how much they're telling the truth or hyping it up. But he was saying, "Listen, Usman knows I can submit him. I've submitted him many times in training. So that could be in his thoughts. It will be interesting to me if Usman, we don't know, but it's possible he'll be sufficiently scared of Burns's BJJ game where both fighters are willing to keep this standing. I think that's one thing that could happen in this fight. Burns isn't going to be able to get this one to the ground, right? I think he's going to be on his back if this one does go to the ground. How much he can do from there remains to be seen. What if this was just a straight kickboxing match between Burns and Usman? Who would you favor there?
I'd probably favor Usman. He just throws more output, and he's been here, done that. 5 rounds. The longer it goes, the more and more Usman has in my favor.
Yeah, I think it's close between the two. I've been impressed with Burns' striking, but it's hard because he's fought Woodley and Maia, two guys, like you mentioned, Woodley just looking to set up that big right hand in his wrestling, and Maia, no real striking at all. So it's kind of tough with these two, but I'm fascinated by this fight. I'm really looking forward to just watching it as a fan. I will have exposure to both these guys. I lean Burns just with the salary savings to maybe score the upset, but can totally see it going either way. Final thoughts between Burns and Usman before we get out of here.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun. The reason I went Usman, and that's my lean after all, is because I think this fight does hit the later rounds, 3, 4, 5. And that's where I think Usman does have the big advantage because he's been in 5-round fights. He has one of the best cardio in the world. Cardio is such a factor in MMA, as we've seen as the fight goes on. And I don't think Burns has bad cardio per se. And I think he's going to be in the fight, especially the first 2-3 rounds. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and close, but it's different when you're in an octagon with a guy that just pushes a pace that's so relentless. And I think that's Usman, but it's so much fun. I would not be surprised to see Burns win. I think Burns can submit Usman, so I know I'm higher on his grappling than Joey is, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see how it goes. My lean's Usman. It's not the most conviction I have. 100% to this fight. I'm going to have, either way, the main event, whoever wins, it's not going to affect how much money I make in DFS because I'll have plenty of both, have other stands on the other fights. But this is one where you sit back and watch and enjoy because it's going to be a lot of fun, very high-level mixed martial arts.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. And, looking forward to the next time we get together. That'll do it for this show. Thanks for tuning in. As always, everybody, we'll be back with another free show, I believe, at, 6 Eastern time, NBA today. I'll be there. Title, I'm not sure if you're there, but it'll be a fun NBA show if you guys are maybe watching the fights and want to get some of that NBA DFS action. We'll be back, the three of us, probably for the next big UFC card. Enjoy the fights tonight. Good luck with your betting and in all your contests. For Joey, for Title, I'm DC. We'll check you next time.